welcome back to the channel. When I speak with people about how I can help them along their mixing journey, there are usually three common problems that surface during that initial conversation. And they tend to be a lack of confidence, mainly around their EQing decisions. The second one is a general feeling of overwhelm, that sense of lost, don't know what they're supposed to be doing next. And then the third is that they feel like they are consistently struggling to achieve the sound of a commercial record. And so in this video, what I want to do to help you if you feel like you can identify with those problems is I want to share with you how the humble channel strip can help you across all those pain points, and not only to build your confidence, but also to make better decisions in your mix so that you can get your mixes sounding closer to what you hear on the radio or on a record. So stick around and I'll show you why I love to use channel strips and how they can boost your confidence and your listening skills and give your mix that familiar analog vibe that is the key, really, I think, to getting that commercial sounding mix. First of all, let's talk about the channel strip itself. What is a channel strip? I don't want to assume that you are comfortable with channel strips. So I'm going to just basically run through what a channel strip is and what you can expect to find on one. So a quick definition of a channel strip would be it's an all-in-one mixing tool that is inspired by the layout of an analog console. This is the SSL 9000J channel strip that is available from Plugin Alliance. If we were to, let's say, open up another, let's go with the API Vision channel strip from UAD. Let's have a look at the signal flow here, the commonalities between the two channel strips. The first thing to consider is the input section. The input section has a gain control that allows you to boost or cut the incoming signal level from your tracks. And at the moment, in this particular instance, and in fact in all these instances for this demonstration, I've boosted the input quite a lot. I've boosted it by 8 dB, and I'll tell you for why in a second. Normally that's at 0 at the top here, and that's where you would normally start. So the fact that I've got it boosted here at 8 dB, don't let that throw you. That's just something for this demonstration. Over here on the API, we're looking at this section here, and you've got a mic input section and a line input section. And when we're dealing with the mix and signals from tracks, we're usually more concerned with the line input. And again, I'm kind of guessing here on this plugin because we don't get any kind of indication other than the number 12 here, which I assume is 12 dB. When I was setting up this session and where I thought 8 dB was, this plugin was coming out being a little quiet than everything else. Now, the mic input, you can actually use that to generate more harmonic saturation, and you can actually use the mic pre to drive the signal hotter into the channel strip. And this is often used to get more saturation out of the channel strip. Harmonic saturation is one of the benefits of using channel strips. It is one of the benefits of using any analog modeled plugin, and is a great plus point for using it, in my opinion. That is one of the keys to getting your mix sounding more like a record, in my opinion. So that's it. That's your mic pre section on the API and the mic pre section here on the SSL. Moving through back to the SSL, we're going into the first sort of section here are the filters, which you can switch in and out. Now, actually, this is one of the main differences between what would be regarded as a domestic console versus a professional console, is that you can switch these sections in and out of the circuit, of the signal path. And the reason for doing that is that each one of these adds their own colour to the signal. Now, it's really very subtle, and it's something that you would discern more if you were actually working on an analog console and using every channel and you were to switch switch all these things, all your EQs out, even if they were all at unity and not boosting or cutting, you would hear that difference in the representation of the mix. I'm not going to get too deep into that today. So we've got the filter section here. They're switched in. Next, we go into the dynamics section. This is just like the ultimate multi-tool for us engineers, recording engineers and mixing engineers. We've got EQ in the form of filters, and we've got a compressor. The option as well with the dynamics section isn't just a compressor, it's also some sort of noise reduction. And what we've got here is the option of either a gate, a noise gate, or a expander. Hopping over to the API, here we have the filters, okay, down the bottom corner here, and then following the circuit through up to the top again, here we've got our compressor, or compressor limiter, or gate, or expander. Next then, we've got the main EQ section here. And on the SSL, we've got high frequency shelf at the top, which we can switch into a bell if we want to. Moving down, we've got high mid frequency, which are the green knobs, where we've got a range of frequencies within that band for us to choose from. And it's all really flexible on the SSL. You can choose any increment there, and it's not indented. Moving then down to the low mid frequencies, same idea. We've got the gain here, we've got the frequency selection here, and we've got the Q being the bandwidth, how wide or narrow we want the bell. And then at the bottom here, we've got the low frequency shelf, or we can turn it into a bell again if we want to. The point of note is that all the different channel strips that are available out there, all are going to have their own individual signature sound, and that comes down a lot to not only the saturation, the quality of the saturation, but also the shape of the curves that are used within the EQ modules. And that can be the reason why you might choose to use one manufacturer's channel strip versus another. It just suits your style of music better, or it just feels more musical to your ears. Over onto the API then, we've got our module, our EQ module here, which we've got switched in. Something to be aware of on a lot of channel strips. Make sure what you're using is actually switched into the circuit. Over on the SSL, we've got that button, the EQ button there to do that. Back to the API, we've got our high frequency selector at the top here, which we can choose to use as a bell or a shelf. We've got a high mid frequency there, and we've got a low mid frequency there, and our low frequencies here again, which we can either change to a bell or a shelf. Then we have the output section, which is a fader, which is fairly straightforward. The other important button that I use a lot on channel strips is the polarity button, or the phase button, as it's sometimes called. Over on the API, you're looking for that symbol, the circle with the line through it, which flips the polarity 180 degrees, so you can check your phase relationships between your drums, a really quick, easy way there. And on the SSL, it's over here. And that's it. That's the basic layout, signal flow of a channel strip. Now we've got various buttons that switch around the positioning of the EQ module and the EQ filters module to be pre or post compression, depending on the way that a sound is coming through to you, whether you feel as though you need to take something out of the compressor circuit. I'm not going to get too much into that today, but know that there are options to move these modules around within the channel strip if you feel as though you need to. I'm leaving these at default, and I usually start with them in default and go from there. Now, each of these channel strips has their own tonal character, their own sonic signature, and this is how you would decide which channel strip you might use on a particular source. This is why it's important to listen to the source first of all and decide how you feel it's lacking in some way, whether it needs help in the low frequencies or whether it's a bit harsh and brittle sounding. That can help inform which channel strip it is you want to use. So what I want to do is just quickly demonstrate the differences between a few manufacturers of channel strips, so you can hear quite how radically they do change the dry tracks and how each one has got its own sonic signature. Here I've got a basic session laid out that comprises of drums, tambourine, bass guitar, a couple of electric guitars, a organ and a vocal. And what I've done is I've just placed instances, the same instances of a channel strip plugin across the insert points here so that we can audition between each manufacturer and talk about what we hear. What I want to just point out to you is that what I've done is I've already explained that I've increased the input gain into the channel strip to force more signal voltage, if you like, through the channel strip, the modelled electronics of the channel strip, to get more harmonic saturation out of it. And that's purely just for this demonstration because that sort of thing is quite subtle and can be hard to hear. But what I've also done is I've just applied a gentle smiley face EQ across each instance. First of all, to just apply a little bit of gain to the high frequencies and the low frequencies, so that will help you hear the qualities of the highs and lows within those tracks. So all I've done is just a 2 dB boost on a shelf at 10K and a 2 dB boost on a shelf at 100 Hertz on every single one of these plugins across all the manufacturers. So we're listening like for like, but bear in mind, an important point is that the curves of these filters are all different for each manufacturer. So and within manufacturers in some case, which we'll get to later on. So that's what we're looking at here. The filters are switched in. We've got the 8 dB boost for the input section and an 8 dB reduction in the output section using the fader so that it's level matched to a degree. Obviously, when we're boosting EQs, we're also increasing level a little bit as well. So just bear that in mind. It really is just about me wanting you to get a sense of the flavour of the characteristics of these individual channel strips. Also note that the dynamics are switched in, but they're not active. I wanted to have the dynamics in the circuit so that contributed to the sound of the channel strip for this experiment. Let's listen to this track. You'll have heard it before if you've listened to or watched my How to EQ series.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe. Can we count on you for just a little dough? I said, I think I left the oven on, I gotta go. If my house burns down, I'll be out in the cold.
Okay, fun little tune where I'm using very minimal effects, just a little bit of reverb here and there just to make it sound a little bit nicer to listen to. Okay, let's go back to the verse. Let's just have a listen to it, and then I'll switch in the first of these channel strips, which is the 4000E by Solid State Logic, or SSL. 4000E, extremely popular and channel strip, and has been modelled by many different manufacturers. Let's listen through that verse, and partway through, I'll switch the 4KE in.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe. Can we count on you for just a little dough?
So I hope you heard that. It's quite significant. I instantly started to sound more like a record, even with just that one plugin instantiated and that little EQ, smiley face EQ applied. Not even any compression at this stage. So I was hearing more punch and a greater sense of depth and even a little bit more width in that respect as well, but probably from the harmonic saturation. The SSL is known for a clean, tight, low-end boost or enhancement. It's known for sounding punchy, and when it was first introduced, it was noticeably different in tone to any of its predecessors. So let's look at a Neve next, because that was one of its predecessors. I've chosen this particular version here only because, which is from Plugin Alliance. It's a great modelled version of the Neve, which, let's have a look. And it was the Neve VXS console, which you can see recording orchestras and films at Skywalker Ranch in California, hit records for ABBA. And this particular console is now at home in the Brainworks studio. We've got a 100 hertz shelf with a 2 dB boost, and we've got a 10K shelf with a 2 dB boost. Okay, let's have a listen to what the Neve does to this mix.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe.
So it's really noticeable. It's got a thicker, rounder, low frequencies, low end. It's known for being a warm sounding analog console with clear highs. Nice, it's kind of sparkly highs. Let's just go between the two. Let me play that again, and I will start with the Neve, take that out, and then go back to the SSL.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe.
So the difference between the two, the low end is much more tight. It's full with the 4KE, but it's just tighter, not as round or wide. Doesn't take up as much space as it does with the Neve. So this is what you just need to think about when you're listening to a source. Is your source, could it benefit from that big, round, low frequency boost? Or do you want something that's got a bit more, just a little more punchy? Okay, let's now move to the API. We had a little look at this at the beginning. Let's listen to how this affects the mix.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on.
That sounds similar to the SSL. It's not got that big, fluffy, thumpy, low frequency that the Neve has. So that makes it feel a bit closer to the SSL. But this isn't quite as sharp in the transients, I don't think, than the SSL. Let's just check that out. We'll start with the Vision, with the API in, and then we'll move over to the SSL.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe.
I think what I hear is that when you listen to the snare and the high frequencies of the snare and the reverbs, just feels a little bit sharper, a little bit brighter, sparklier than the API. So, that's a tonal decision that could be very useful depending on the tracks that you are working with. Another SSL, it was manufactured later than the 4000E, and that is the 9000J, another really popular console. So let's have a listen to what this is doing to this mix.
She said we're raising money for so and so. They're gonna save us from the politicians, and I'm sure you know what the hell is going on all around the globe. Can we count on?
Okay, instant high end sheen, tight punchy low end. Let's see how that differs then when we go back to the 4KE. And what I'll do is, for a bit of a change, let's go to the verse 2.
Then I was backed into a corner up against the wall by mouth attack from a know-it-all. They chased me through the den, then down the hall. They just...
The difference for me, the highs feel just a little bit more extended with the 9000J, but I get more thump on the kick with the 4KE. So, with regard to that tight low end difference there's another consideration with the SSL channel strip plugins, and that is that they can be provided with two different sets of low frequency curves. So if we let's open this up, you notice that this has got black caps on the low frequency parameters here on the knobs down here. There's this button here which has got E on it, which refers to the 4000E, and that changes the characteristic of the curves and the tone of the low frequencies here on the 9000J, changes them to the, I think it's the 242 series EQ on the SSL 4000E. So you have the flexibility there to switch. If you only have this plugin, the 9000J, you can take advantage of the low frequency extension that you get on the 4KE by just using that, switching that E button into position. When we listen to the 4KE at the start, we were listening to the Black Cap 242 version of the low frequencies. Here we've got the Waves version, the enhanced version of the SSL channel, which is another great option. It too has the option to change EQ type. So you can see the brown caps there, or it can switch over to black. So you've got the ability to switch from the default 242 black over to, I think it's the O2 brown, which is a much earlier console. And the characteristics of this, in my experience, have been leaning nearer to that more rounder, fuller, low frequency representation. So let's try that. So what I've done is the Waves SSL channel I've got set to brown, and the SSL 4KE I've got set to black. So let's switch between those two to see if we can hear any difference. I'm going to start with the SSL's own 4KE plugin, and then we will switch that out and then switch in the Waves version.
Then I was backed into a corner up against the wall by mouth attack from a know-it-all. They chased me through the den, then down the hall.
I think you can hear it on the bass guitar. I think that's where it feels as though the bass guitar gets more full with the brown EQ switched in.
Then I was backed into a corner up against the wall by mouth attack from a know-it-all.
Yeah, and I think you can hear that when I switched back over to the 4KE, the bass guitar is just a bit smaller sounding in the mix. So you have options. This is the ultimate multi-tool, and I just love using them because I never get bored using them. And there are so many different ones to choose from. You've got Focusrite, you've got the Amex series. There's just so many different ones. So it's important to be across how each one sounds tonally to be able to decide which one to use on your set of multitracks. It can be really overwhelming when faced with a digital EQ plugin. It can be difficult to know where to start because the options are never ending. You can put in bands wherever you feel as though you need to, and you can end up chasing your tail, looking for frequencies or resonances and cutting them when perhaps you really don't need to. And that's another reason why using a channel strip plugin can help you mix faster. And I've said it in previous videos, but whilst it may not be a priority for a lot of you to mix faster necessarily, the benefit of mixing faster is that you're able to stay in that creative zone and get into a flow, get into a role. That's where the fun is. That's where you lose yourself in a mix and you lose track of time. So for that reason, you're able to make decisions much quicker using a channel strip because you have got limited choices. Where we see this coming into play a lot is in modelled EQ modules or outboard units, such as the Pultecs, the Neves, the 1073s, the 1084s. They all have just a fixed series of EQ bands, and you can have no more than what you've been presented. And when you think that thousands and thousands of records have been made using just those EQs, whether they're actually in a console or whether they're in an outboard piece of equipment, you don't need endless opportunity to just keep adding EQ bands and just EQing the heck out of your sources. Just keep it simple. Stick to 4 or 6 bands, including filters. And you'll find that you are able to mix quicker because of that and make easier decisions. Let me just kind of show you what I mean. If we open up the API and we look at the EQ module here, you can see that it's all got fixed in the blue around the outside edge here. All the frequency points are fixed: 2.5K, 5K, 12.5K. They're just the manufacturers have spent a lot of time and research, and those frequency bands are there for a reason. They have been chosen as being the most useful for the range of instruments that are commonly used in music today, no matter what genre. So then they're not out to trip you up. Whereas with a digital EQ, you don't really know where to start. With a emulation like this or a modelled EQ like this or channel strip like this, you've got a clue where to start. All you need to be able to do is just make an assessment of what it is about the sound that you're listening to, what needs addressing. Is it in the low frequencies? Is it in the mid frequencies? Is it in the high frequencies? And with that basic information, you can start using a channel strip just like that and get a really usable result within seconds. The other way that channel strips help you mix faster is that it eliminates that context shifting. When you may start with a digital EQ and then you might think, I think I might compress this now. You've got to go looking for a compressor. You've got to go typing for it, searching for it. And that takes you out of that creative mindset. And you go in shifting more into that logical, analytical mindset where you're having to type things and think about manufacturers' names or model numbers. And that just kills it. Whereas in a channel strip, everything you need is there. And so why not use it? Let me show you how quick it is to EQ something with a channel strip. Let's just listen to these guitars, and I may go to a chorus. What do you notice about that sound? What's your first impression of that sound? To me, it sounds nice and full. It sounds controlled in the top frequencies, not particularly harsh. It's not harsh. There are no sharp transients to it. But I do feel as though maybe it could sound a little bit brighter. Rather than using the channel strip here to do that, I am going to use a channel strip. I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to use this Kramer HLS. There are particular channel strips, manufacturers, EQ modules that are known for sounding particularly good on certain sets of instruments. So like Focusrite sounds really good on pianos. The HLS here, the Helios channel sounds really great on guitars. The Trident sounds really great on guitars. The 4000E sounds really great on drums. So with that in mind, let's have a look at this, let's take a listen to this guitar and see what we can do. First of all, I'm just going to bypass this. I've already got the 4KE in the circuit. And don't forget, it's doing the smiley face. It is adding 100 hertz boost, but let's just forget that for the time being. So let me just show you the benefit of having these fixed bands. The first EQ band we have is a 10K shelf. That's it. We don't have to decide what we're going for a 10K or 12K shelf. You don't have to do any of that. You've got 10K or nothing. The mid band, we can go from 700 hertz to 6K, and then at the bottom we've got the bass. And we've got 60 hertz, 120 hertz, 250 or 400. On the bottom half of the selector, we've got negative dBs, so -3, -6, -9 dBs of a fixed 50 hertz. So let's see what we can do with this guitar, how quickly we can EQ it. So you might decide, well, I can hear that getting brighter, but I'm not sure that's quite right, the right frequency. So now what you would do is just go and change the frequency selection. And again, you can't get bogged down in all the individual frequencies on the way to the frequency bands that we've got fixed here. They're fixed. You hear how the tone changes quite drastically there. It's gone from quite a bright, sharp transient following that 2.8K boost to now something that's a little bit more mid-focused. So that just makes the decision so much easier. And particularly in the mix, that would be where you would do it. If we just mute the vocal for now. So you hear how the transient changes drastically by switching from the 1.4 to the 2.8. And so it just makes it so much easier to decide which way to go, what decision to make. And this is why channel strips are great at helping you mix faster and stay in that creative mindset. So that's the HLS channel on a guitar. If you want to learn more about EQing guitars, I'll put a card up here somewhere for you to find out and go a little bit deeper about using channel strips on guitars. The second reason I love using channel strips and why they're so awesome is because they get your mix sounding so much closer to sounding like a record. Digital mixers, when these days a lot of people are all in the box, digital mixers can sound a little bit lifeless and kind of all on one plane, quite sort of flat sounding. And by using channel strips in several places across your mix. You can get closer to that analog sound because it's like you're running your mix through an analog desk. These days, the quality of these plugins is so great that the harmonic saturation takes us very close indeed to that actual analog sound. The more signal that you feed into these channel strips will exaggerate that analog effect even more, and that's what I demonstrated really at the start of this video. My favourite channel strips to use to get closer to that familiar sound of drums on a rock record would be the SSL 4000E on the drum shells. For the cymbals, I might decide to go a different route and use the 9000J because of that more open top end that it's got. So I often find a combination of those two gets me a really great result. If you want a more grittier, dirtier sounding high frequency on your drums, on the cymbals, which is more than valid on a rock track, then stick with the 4000E on everything. So you've got choices, but now hopefully you're armed with a bit more knowledge as to the tonal characteristics of some of these channel strips. You can experiment a little bit more and find your own favourite combination. The third reason is that I really feel as though they boost your confidence as a mixer. Because of the element of choice that has been removed to a certain extent in what you're given with a channel strip, you're less likely to get yourself in a bit of a fix. You're also mixing knowing that you're as close as you can possibly get to mixing on an analog board. And that in itself can help boost confidence. Because you know you can trust what the manufacturers have created here, and you know that it has got the provenance of countless records that we all know and love. So it stands to reason that you can't go far wrong using a channel strip, and therefore that should help your confidence levels. Problem these days is often that mixers can sound over-processed because we just have all these options, all these plugins that we can use. I think if we can step back and work within the confines of a channel strip, you can all of a sudden start to hear that your mixes open up, don't sound quite so flat, one-dimensional. They don't feel as though you've taken away the life of an instrument by just using far too many processing plugins. And a channel strip can keep you in check with regard to that. Now, I don't use a channel strip on every single channel. I use a combination of channel strips and modelled EQ outboard boxes, such as the Neve 1073, 1084, both of which have featured in Neve consoles. So even though I don't use a channel strip on every single track, I'm still using the characteristics of that EQ and the harmonic distortion that comes along with that, and then an outboard compressor. So I'm still staying within the confines of a channel strip layout. It's just I'm doing it in a more modular process. I'm not suggesting you only use a channel strip. What I'm suggesting is you think about the modules in a channel strip and then pick and choose the different outboard gear that you would rather use and try for the same effect, but you've got a little bit more flexibility. For example, using a Neve EQ with a 1176 compressor or a distressor compressor. In that scenario where I'm picking and choosing what modules I'm going to use, I'm able to do that and not lose the benefit of the input section drive by using harmonic saturation on my instrument group buses. And you'll see that if you go back through my videos and you watch the template series, you'll see how I do that on my main group buses is just apply some sort of saturation plugin to emulate that vibe that we get from using an actual analog console. It's great for ear training as well. I just demonstrated how you can just apply a boost at one frequency and then change the frequency to hear how those different frequencies sound, obviously. But you really do, when you do that time and time again, you really do get a sense of what 2.8 sounds like on guitar versus 1.4. And you can apply that to any instrument then, because you have imprinted in your brain how those frequencies sound on an electric guitar. You can, get a rough guess of how that's going to sound on other instruments as well. There are no spectrum analyzers on a channel strip, so you're not using your eyes at all. You're not being led into an area of the frequency spectrum on a track where you don't need to. You are totally relying on your ears to make that decision. And I find that sometimes spectrum analyzers can take you down the wrong path. And what might look like a frequency that is too prominent in a recording, actually, when you listen to it in the mix, it isn't. But that boost, being able to see that on a spectrum analyzer sometimes can tempt you to cut some of it. And I find that can be a little bit unhelpful. And so, again, channel strips, you don't get any visual clues. You only have to use your ears. You only have a certain set of frequency bands to flick between. And I think it's just a terrific way to train your ears to recognise frequencies, to be able to just move through a mix so much faster and with so much more confidence. In a similar vein, the great thing about the API is that not only have you got your fixed frequency bands, you've got fixed dB increments as well. You can't cut something by half a dB on an API desk. You've got to go all in and go for either a boost of 2 dB or a cut of 2 dB. If you're in the early stages of mixing and you struggle to hear the differences sometimes of 1 dB or 2 dB even, using an API will help you hear that, because you're going from a 0 to 2 in an instant. If you're dialing it in slowly with an SSL or with a Neve, you don't necessarily hear it so obviously. But when it's a jump, a binary jump from 0 to 2, in the flick of a switch, you'll hear it. And that's why the API EQs are great for ear training purposes and building confidence. Okay, so I hope I've convinced you why channel strips are awesome. And I would love it if you would let me know in the comments if you use channel strips currently, if you might consider using more of them, and if so, which ones are your favourites for which instruments. So that's a lot I'm asking from you in the comments, but I'm really interested to know. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you want me to help you develop your listening skills even further, then there is a link in the description to sign up to my weekly newsletter. In those newsletters, I break down classic tracks and try to help you hear the details that you may otherwise have missed. They've been really well received, and so I think you might find them helpful, particularly if you are looking to boost your mix analysis and listening skills. So that's all from me in this video. If you feel as though it's helped you, please give it a like. And if you want more mixing tips like this, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to learn more about EQing using channel strips, then there's a video on screen now that shows you how to use a channel strip to EQ guitars. So check that out, and I'll see you in the next video.